26. Proverbs 26. If you'll take a quick peek at the our little sign up there, Jay was working today, and I said, well, I'll pick out the picture. And I've entitled it this evening, Three Warnings. Three Warnings. And you'll see them, and they're represented by our pictures here. I can give you the three warnings because that's point number one is the lazy. Point number two is the troublemaker. And point number three is the agitator. And so kind of a representation. Those are point one, point two, and point three. And we'll find them in verses 13 through 22. And again, a lot of verses, but I did not want to spend just one time on each, or one message on each one of these subjects. We've covered them before. Proverbs has a tendency to have a redundance, repeating. And you remember what I've said many, many times. If in the Navy, when I go to class, they always said, if I say it once, it's good to know. If I say it twice, it's a test question. Well, our Bible is just filled with multiple applications and statements, and so we'll just explore a few of them tonight. Three warnings, and follow along. I'll read verse 13 through verse number 22, have a word of prayer, and we'll look at the three warnings. The slothful man saith, there is a lion in the way, a lion is in the streets. As the door turneth upon its hinges, so doth the slothful upon his bed. The slothful hideth his hand in his bosom. It grieveth him to bring it again to his mouth. Verse 16, the sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that can render a reason. Verse 17, he that passeth by and meddleth with strife belongeth not to him, is like one that taketh a dog by the ears. As a madman who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man that deceiveth his neighbor, and saith, am not I in sport? If in today's texting, right next to that one, put JK. Just kidding. Something in the Bible. Imagine that. Verse 20, where no wood is, there the fire goeth out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife ceaseth. As coals are to burning coals, and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down unto the uttermost parts of the belly. Father, thank you for loving us. Thank you for a time that we can once again examine these three subjects, just looking over them. Words of wisdom, things that will help us to avoid problems and conflict. And so help us just to understand we don't point fingers, we're just preaching your word. And thank you for your grace for this hour. Amen. So we find in our text three areas that need to be considered and evaluated. That's how I started it out. Point number one, I was looking up and I literally Googled a lazy person, and I saw this guy laying down on the couch, so lazy he couldn't even get a fork to the spaghetti. He just latched on one of those strings and started bringing it in, and I was like, yeah, that would be a good picture of a lazy. And how important is that in our life to consider? Now, I know it's in my notes, but let me say it while it's fresh in my notes. Taking time to rest does not make a person lazy. Having a time of rest after a lifelong of work does not make one lazy. What we need to consider is the general attitude of someone who is capable of working and not willing to work. And so and churches are growing older in nature, and a lot less of younger couples are coming in. We're having churches that are aging out, if you will, getting older and older. The things that I've been here now almost 25 years, and the things that I did 25 years ago, I can't do. I was just thinking, I was stepping out in the hallway earlier, and Jason, I see him do it all the time. Jason, I'll just pick on you for a minute, not a bad way. This is a good one. Jason always has his hands behind him like this, behind his back. I can't even put my belt on. And so I'm kind of jealous. But, 10 years ago, before they replaced my shoulders and put pins and metal in there, I could reach back there. Now, not so much. So we need to be careful that when we're looking at this first subject in verses 13 through verse number 16 is about the lazy person, is we need to be first understand just because one has fulfilled their season of work and are now in the years of leisure. I am reminded, I think I did this as an illustration some time ago. There was a preacher down at Camp Zion, and I can look at his face. I know who he is. He was the one that actually did the electrical, the lighting and everything, and pastored a church. But one time he had a message, and he had an illustration, and he had a young man start out, young teenager, start out, and the auditorium, if you've been to Camp Zion, is huge. And he had him going around running as a jog to run around the auditorium. And he went all the way around the auditorium, and when he came down, he said, when you get here, then you stop. And he said, that's the preacher and young in his life, and how he has the zeal, and he gave that illustration. And he says, and then you go into the next phase of your life, and he had a preacher that was a little bit older, and he had him walk around the auditorium, and he preached while he was walking around about the maturity, and doesn't have the energy that he did to run, but he's still walking, and how important that is. And he got back around, and he sat down, and then he used himself as the illustration, as the third preacher. He said, you come into the season of life where you're no longer able to run, you're no longer able to walk, but you can stand and you can sit down. And he sat down on the steps, and he had the young man stand up again and take another lap. And he can say, and keep going, don't give up, be faithful. He said his job never finished until God calls him home. It just changed because of the years of his life. That is not the description that we have here that Solomon has left us. The word slothful, and all the way down in the word, verse 16, the word sluggard. If you look them up in the Hebrew, they're virtually, and I don't have the Hebrew word in front of me, but it is the very same word. And so it would be, and it literally, by definition, are in fact the same word, and it means a person who is habitually inactive or lazy. Of course, we kind of know that. Christianese talks about sluggards and laziness and such, and the interaction of it. And so, what does that mean? Well, if you think about it, and we won't go back there, but the word sluggard and slothful is actually back over. Well, yeah, we got a couple. No, well, Proverbs chapter 10. Go over there real quick, just back a few pages. Proverbs 10. I wasn't planning on it, so I don't have it pre-marked. Proverbs 10, and look at verse number 26. If you get there before me, you'll have to wait because my fingers don't seem to be working. There they are. Proverbs 10. Look at verse 26 through 28. As vinegar to the teeth and as smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to them that send him. The fear of the Lord prolongeth days, but the years of the wicked shall be shortened. The hope of the righteous shall be gladness, but the expectation of the wicked shall perish. He's looking at so we go back and we're literally, I told you, if it's once, it's good to know. If it's twice, it's going to be a test question. What is a sluggard? I don't know about anyone else. I like the taste of pickles and things that are in vinegar. Robin just kind of like, I can drink. My mouth is watering. I'm a foodie, and I can drink pickle juice. I love it. But the truth is, most people, when you put vinegar in your mouth, it's like it takes the veneer off your teeth, and it just kind of makes your teeth cringe. And so he's using a real fine analogy of what it is. And then smoke in the eyes. I don't know about anybody. I love campfires. I hate when the smoke just doesn't stay out. And it seems like no matter where I'm standing, the wind shifts and it hits me in the face anyways. So he uses those two irritants to give us a picture of what it is, how others look at a lazy person, a sluggard, or a slothful person. And one of the statements they say, there's a lion in the way. A lion is in the streets. Otherwise, I can't go outside because of the potential danger. It kind of reminded me of that little, there was a time, I'm telling you, I know I have it here. There it is, child's story of the little boy who cried wolf. He was out tending the sheep, and he got bored, so he runs in the village. There's a wolf, there's a wolf. Everybody runs out. And then he does it 2 or 3 more times, and there was never any wolf. He just sitting there laughs. And then the wolf showed up. And then he cried wolf. And there's an analogy, a picture of the sluggard who says, I can't go out because of work. Pretty soon, you look at him and say, there's nothing there. What does that remind us of? Well, go back into verse number 14. As the door turneth upon his hinges, so doth the slothful upon his bed. How do you give an illustration? A door moves, but a door doesn't go anywhere. So if the door is attached, all it does, that's all it does. Doesn't really accomplish anything, doesn't really go anywhere. The sluggard, the lazy, is one who looks like they're moving, but they're not accomplishing a whole lot. And we need to be careful. And then he says, the slothful hideth his hands in his bosom. I was interested in that. It's kind of interesting because Paul doesn't use that statement. But in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 and verse number 10, he says this concerning work and the ability to work. For even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat. In our text, we find that the slothful hideth his hands in his bosom, and it grieveth him to bring it again to his mouth. He's so lazy, he's got his hands tucked away, and he doesn't even want to. It would take so much energy to pick up that little bit of piece of bacon and bring it to you. Oh, they don't eat bacon, do they? The little bit of fried lamb. And bring it to, no, can't do it. So that's why I got that picture. Person so lazy, not even a fork. He just puts the plate up where he can reach it, sticks out his tongue and lashes out and gets one of those pieces of spaghetti and sucks it down. Boy, that's lazy. I'm afraid that would be, in my case, a little messy. But anyways, he said, the slothful man hideth it. And Paul turned right around and said, well, didn't we tell you, even when we were with you, if a person doesn't work, then he doesn't eat. Again, we're not talking about the person incapable of working. We're not talking about the person who has gone beyond their working years. You know what I found out? Mind you, in Sicily, they still have the European mentality. America is completely different. When someone gets old enough, you put them in a nursing home in America. But in around the world, other than America, when someone gets old, they have their children, and their children either move in with mom and dad, or the children move mom and dad in with them, and they have houses that are generational houses. And you say, well, you know, mom and dad are a little bit slower. Yeah, but mom and dad still want to help. So they contribute what they can. May not be, it's almost like tithes and offerings. You know what I mean? A tithe is not equal giving. A tithe is equal sacrifice. Otherwise, if you take out a tithe, that's 10%. What is 10% to someone who makes $10? $1. But what is 10% to someone who makes $100,000? $10,000. You say, well, that's not equal. Yes, it is. It's not equal giving. It's equality in sacrifice to give the same amount. And so there are times that, you know, we say, well, they've gotten so old, they've become unuseful. No, even those of us that are getting up in age, we still want to be useful. Just can't do what we used to do. Not too long ago, boy, I'm running out of time already. We were down south, and Deanna had she had her car, Chrysler back then, and I heard it scraping front brakes. She needed new brake pads, so we got new rotors because she had scraped it down to metal on metal, and I got new rotors, got new brake pads, and I'm just looking at it, and she said, no. She says, I don't want you to do it. She says, could you show Melvin how to do it? So I was able to, and he's a welder. He's not a mechanic. I once watched Melvin try to build a doghouse when they were living down here in Kent City, and 3 pieces of wood he had like 110 nails in. And so wooden nails for Melvin is not good. So, but I was able to stand over his shoulder and say, you see that bolt right there? And, you know, I want you to put a 10 millimeter on that, or a 12 or 14, you know, whatever. I want you to turn it this way. And he did all that, and he unhooked it, and he pulled it all up. Am I doing the work? Nope. But am I helping someone to get the work done? So I just thought that would be interesting. Then he says, the sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that can render a reason. The sluggard is the one who tells, he's got so many reasons why he is lazy. And again, it reminds me, when we were living in Pennsylvania, Ron and I worked a lot of it, and I was in my office this one day, and Ron was working on a house that was being funded by HUD. And they needed some electrical work done, and so he had to get into the electrical panel. And he got into the trailer. It was a single-wide trailer, and the trailer, it's in the back, and they went back there. There was a guy laying there about 450 pounds. And the electric panel was on the other side of the bed, so they had to move the bed out to get to the electric panel. He was so lazy, he says, you figure out how to do it while I'm laying here. You know what Ron did? Packed his bags up and walked right out the door. They didn't want it fixed. And here's my commentary to this. There are plenty of Monday morning coaches and quarterbacks who have all the answers, and that what they should have done to win the game. Yet very few of them, if any, are willing or able to really do the job. We need to beware of the lazy. The second one is we need to beware of the troublemaker. Verses 17 through 19, he that passeth by and meddleth with strife belongeth not to him, is like one that taketh a dog by the ears. Now, dogs then and dogs now, we don't really have dogs, we have humans with 4 legs and skin. But a dog back then was not, if they were working dogs, they were fierce dogs that were used for fighting and for staving off wild animals, so they were quite vicious. But one of the most tender areas, even today, of any dog, a dog loves to be scratched behind the ears. You can touch him behind the ear, give him a little scratch. Even when I have Midnight out, and the little guy about this tall and this long, and he walk and they said, "Can I pet him?" So they put their hand down and they reach behind and just love. He just lays there and they're like, "Oh yeah." But that's not what I'm talking about. He's actually talking about that the ears are so tender that if you try to grab the ears of a dog. My granddaughter once came to me, and I said, I really have something, I don't know, it really hurts. And I said, "Could you see if I have something?" And she reached up and went to touch my ear, and I turned on her. You grab a dog by the ears and pull on him, and you'll find out real quick. And he says here, a troublemaker, or one that meddleth with strife, is like one who takes on the ears of a dog and tries to pick a dog up, tries to pick him up. You're liable to get bit. He's a troublemaker. As a madman who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man that deceiveth his neighbor and saith, "Am not I in sport?" There are many times, I wrote my personal thought here, there are times when intermingling and helping someone in time of need, it is, especially in verse number 17, if you pass by and you see someone in distress, that does not, you're not classified as a meddler if you're there to assist. But if you're there just to put in your 2 cents worth, and tell them how to get the job done, and there's time. You've got to have great wisdom to know when to help and when to stay out of it. One of the great problems that we have in marriages happens to be the advice of the friends, neighbors, and in-laws or outlaws. Everyone's got an opinion on how something's broken in the household, and they're just meddling. Many a divorce has occurred in our lands because of someone interjecting and trying to tell someone how they ought to live their life. We need to be very careful that we do not become the one that meddleth with strife. And then it says, as a madman who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man that deceiveth his neighbor and saith, "Am not I in sport?" I put verse 18 and 19 are literally together, same subject. We're given instructions that when pranks and hurt is set in motion, it does not mean it is a joke. And I told you can put down there today's terminology in our texting, JK, just kidding. That does not make, that little sentence, "I was only joking," does not bring an excuse to someone who brings hurt into a conversation. And many people try to, after they've interjected, you know what the problem is? The mouth interjects before the brain intersects. The brain, before the brain can ever say, "Don't say it," it's already past the lips. And it's just like that donut. Once past the lips, forever on the hips. Yeah, well, once past the lips, after it's said, you can't bring it back. It will bring irrevocable, incalculable, big words. It can bring trouble that you don't even realize. Somebody may be going through a struggle, and they just need words of encouragement. And we come in with a firebrand. We come in shooting arrows. We come in, yeah. And then when you see the hurt on their face, or they've slumped down into depression, you say, you're just too thin-skinned. I was just joking. No, they're not. believe their first words, not their excuse of their first words. Their first words are often the ones that are already there, and they're just, it's kind of like, you've heard me say it many a time on about the slipped wrench on the mechanic. When the wrench slips, the first thing that comes out of the mouth is what they've been thinking about, what they've been reading, what they've been living. Well, the same thing happens when someone interjects into another person's life. The first things of hurtfulness that are going out is because that's what they've been thinking about. That's what they've been doing. Many hurts have been covered with that little statement, I was only kidding. We need to be aware of our troublemakers. Then the last thing, the next 6 minutes, and I got this, is verses 20 and 20 through 22. It says, where no wood is, there the fire goeth out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife. See, I love that one. The best way to answer someone who is trying to cause trouble. And this little word talebearer is one who is a tattletale. The one who is bringing about rumors and false statements. And you don't, it may even be a true statement, but you got to ask yourself, is it even necessary that I know it? If it's not necessary and it doesn't affect me, why are you bringing it up to my attention? Well, I just thought you needed to know it. No. It would be so much better if we as God's children would just come up to, someone comes up and says, did you hear about, and you say, stop right there. I don't even want to know who you want to talk about because I'm not interested. That's a talebearer. That's a tattletale. Someone who's coming in and bringing, 99.9% of the talebearers are the level of bringing someone down to their level. Because someone is struggling to walk a holy and a righteous life, and we have problems, and we have difficulties, and we fail, and someone sees it, and the first thing they say is, man, we just need to let other people know about it. Oh, Brother Neiman, you need to pray for Rebecca. Let me tell you why. No, Brother Neiman ought to just give me a little bit of a wisdom. Not interested. Thank you, Rebecca. When too many times talebearers, it's an agitator. That's what I put. We need to be aware of the agitator. He's a talebearer. And then he says, as coals are burning coals and wood for a fire, so contentious man to kindle, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. Otherwise, as long as they're feeding the fire burns. I every once in a while, I have brush that I have over at the house, and I get up a pile, and it's spread out a ways, and I have to strike a match, and I start burning, and pretty soon where the fire is not extinguished, but it's dying down. So I take my handy-dandy garden rake that's all metal and doesn't have plastic on it, and I have the wood handle, and I start bringing it, and I'm bringing it over and fold over the stuff that is on the edges that's not burning. Why? Because if I don't, the fire will not, eventually I could come out in the morning time or later on in the afternoon, and there will be a hole of everything that got burnt. Everything on the outside never got touched. But if I want to burn it all up, I got to drag all the wood in. Well, that's exactly what happens to a contentious person, one who wants to agitate. He sees all of the outlying troubles around us. And so what does he do? He gets his garden spiritual rake and he starts bringing it over into the coals. I was told of a preacher, I think it was Jack Hiles, if my memory is right, but said that he went to visit a man who had been part of the church for many years, and he quit coming. And so he went and visited the man, and Jack Howell told the story. I don't know if it was him personally, but anyways. And he came in, and the guy was bracing for impact. You know, the preacher's I haven't been there in 3 months. He's going to blast me for not being there. And the preacher was talking, and the fire was going, and he reached over with the poker stick, and pretty soon he just grabbed one of the red coals from the fire, and he pulled it off to the side. And they were talking and drinking a cup of coffee and whatever. And pretty soon the coal started to die down. And the man started crying. He says, I know, preacher. He said, I'm that person right there. I need to be put back into the fire so that I can burn hot. So the preacher reaches over and scoots it back in and reignites the fire. By the way, that's called revival. Yeah. Well, there are times our bodies, we need to be rekindled. Believe it or not, I know I don't need to preach it, but the Bible in the Old Testament speaks specifically 3 times a year. The men of Jerusalem, of Judea, the Jews, were instructed 3 times a year to seek instruction. And so there's nothing wrong with going to revival services, having special services 2, 3 times or more a year to take us, that we've been set on the side, and we need to be brought back in, and we need to be rekindled. And so the tale, he says, so is a man that deceiveth his neighbor. Excuse me, that got wrong pace. And so it reminds us that poking the flames will only intensify the heat, and the contentious man just loves to poke the fire. But we need to be, if we're on the other side, if we're outside of God's fire, we need to be brought back in. If someone just wants to stir up the coals, don't give them opportunity. I wrote this about verse number 22. The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. You ever heard the term, I know when I was younger, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. It's a lie. Words hurt. A lot of people are outside of the fellowship and membership of one of their New Testament churches because of hurtful words. And Solomon says in verse number 22, the words of a talebearer are as wounds, that they go down into the uttermost parts of the belly. And many, I put down here, yes, words hurt. And many times the hurt is deeper than the blade of a knife. Simple thoughts. How do we address these verses? 3 things. Very simple. That's my conclusion. Number 1, beware of the lazy. Number 2, beware of the troublemaker. And number 3, kind of goes with the troublemaker, beware the agitator. You know, I was looking for I went onto Google. I use Bing, but looked up images, and I put in there agitator. You know what I got? Washing machine. I said, well, that doesn't work. I got to find out something else. And so I found that little man standing there. And often their countenance describe who they are. You can see trouble in their body, in their eyes, and you can hear trouble in their lips. We need to be aware. And there's times we need to walk away. You say, well, they're friends or they're family. If they're an agitator, they're a troublemaker, they're lazy, we need to take a step back. Especially if they're not saved, don't wrap and fellowship in wrap arms with them, but help be friendly to them. But don't be so intertwined in their lives that they bring you, here you are up here struggling to be God's holy servant, and they're down here saying, you're just too holy. What are you, Holy Joe? And what are they trying to do? They're trying to bring you down to their level, so they feel, well, they'd be better if you were doing level down so they can now be superior. No, we don't measure superiority, do we? We just measure our relationship between, and if you measure it with comparing one another, that's bad news. If you measure it comparing to Jesus, yeah, we got a whole lot of work to do in our own lives. We got so much work, we'd be better off taking care of the things in our own lives than worrying about the things of others. Just a thought. Father, thank you for loving us. Thank you for directing in our lives. Whew. Simple thoughts, but meaningful. It would help us to walk in a manner pleasing to you. And so, Lord, as we go our ways, maybe we'll chew on this for a while, that we want to be a testimony for you to this world. But we also realize that there are those that don't want us, and they'll do anything they can to stop us. So help us to have the sweet Holy Spirit directing our paths to recognize those that are causing troubles. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen.